everybody? Back in the garage again, and today is the day we're finally going to put in the standalone ECU and get this thing going. So a few videos back I mentioned that I was going with the ECU Master Classic. Today we'll be going over kind of my process and how I'm figuring out, or basically just kind of showing you guys how I'm going to get it in the car. I do have some clips that I'll put up now of me kind of just unlooming the harness and kind of getting it to this point. And then kind of after that, I went ahead and I have the two pinouts. This is for the B13, so that is for my harness right there. And then this one is just for a S14 to the EMU. So it's very similar. Again, this is just, I think, similar to the S13. This would be coil on plug, whereas this is like external coil. So let's go over a few more things. So in the ECU Master box, you have this. So you have the ECU itself, you have a gray plug and a black plug. And then underneath that, it comes with all of the pins you will need to basically pin the plugs. All of this information, if you Google basically this ECU, they already have videos on YouTube that will explain this a lot better than I am currently. I'm just kind of showing you guys on my channel the process I'm going through. So yeah, if you decide to do this yourself, this might help, but they probably have videos that are going to be way more helpful than I am. So back to it. You have all the pins in here. You have the ECU and then you have the two plugs. So what I went ahead and did last night was separated. I have everything on my ECU, all the wires labeled to the numbers corresponding with the pinout for my harness. So then I can go back to the printout I have here and just see which wire is. And then I separated each for the gray plug and for the black plug. So now it sort of should be as simple as me pinning all these wires to the corresponding plug, the black plug and the gray plug, and I should be able to fire the car up. There's a few things I want to do to the harness before I get to that point. I want to just like go through and clean it up a little bit better, but I think think that's about as simple as it should be. All right, we're back. I don't remember where I left off on this, but it doesn't matter because everything has changed. Not everything, but the plan is a little bit different. I believe I just kind of left off as I was starting to de-loom the harness to get the ECU in there. And I kind of have it laid out a little bit. You can see I do have most of the harness finished up. There is a few odds and ends here. I believe those are my two wires I will be talking about in a second. This is just a random straggler ground, and this is just my neutral position switch or whatever. So realistically, the harness is done as far as it goes right now. I kind of am at a roadblock because I don't really know what to do right now with the ignition setup. So I was currently going to still run the distributor setup, and that's kind of where I'm hitting a roadblock. So I've talked to you guys before. I think I mentioned it. I have these two pinouts here. I have the ECU pinout for this car, the B13, and then I have this one that I found that I got with for the EMU, but it's for an S14 ECU, which most everything is exactly the same. Pin-wise, you can cross-reference these, and mostly everything is exactly the same. But when you get to the ignition stuff, S14s are coil and plug, so that's kind of where I'm getting confused. Basically, I have the pinout from the EMU for individual, or even from the S14 ECU for individual coil signals, where my ECU for the B13 only has the one. I probably won't be able to get this on camera, but number 3 is ignition signal, and then number 1 at the top there is power transistor control signal. And that's confusing. So what is confusing to me about the way that is worded is if you trace those wires out into the harness, number 1, which they say is power transistor control signal, does go to the transistor or igniter or whatever you want to call it. So that would be what I would think would be the signal to, ignite that, which would send signal to the distributor or to the coil, which would fire through the distributor, giving the spark plug spark. But then it states that 3 is ignition signal, which is was very confusing to me, still kind of is, because it just kind of almost contradicts itself, because it says that the power control signal goes to, but the ignition signal. So that's where I'm getting confused, and kind of what I could take from it. 3, which is the ignition signal, this wire right here, goes to this little black box, which is just kind of taped onto the side of our harnesses in the area of the wiring for the ignition coil and for the transistor module, or whatever you want to call it. So it's just kind of taped over there, and that little unit has a big red ignition power wire going to it, which taps into the power for the coil, and it also has it just goes to a ground. And then it also taps into the green wire, which is the RPM signal that I'm tapping into for my window switch for the VVL. So it has an RPM signal going to it, a power and a ground, and that other wire that goes to the ECU that is stated as ignition signal. So what I'm sort of thinking is this little radio noise suppressor, because that's what I could take from it, that it is in any other harness on like a GA16 or a normal, the Ultima. Pretty sure it's a radio noise suppressor, just so you don't get noise through your speakers from the ignition and from just all the pulses from the coils using power and from the ignition coil using power, yada yada. I think it's a dual purpose device though, because it has the RPM signal going in, and then right next to it on the other pin you can see here, so the RPM signal is that green one. This yellow wire is the one going to the ECU, which is stated as number 3 ignition signal, whereas number 2 engine RPM signal for tachometer. So that would be the engine RPM signal coming out of the ECU. I almost want to say that this number 3 ignition signal is the engine RPM signal coming into the ECU. Not positive on that, I can't figure it out. Maybe I'm just not wording any of my searches right, but like I said, been looking at diagrams. I'm not the greatest with diagrams or any of that sort of stuff, but that's kind of what I can take from it. So I started looking into the coil unplug thing. I started ordering parts for the coil unplug thing. I went to the junkyard. I got a bunch of connector clips for the modern Nissan coil packs. So this will be the connector from like anything from the QR25 Ultima that I got these off of, all the way up to like the modern GTR, which is actually what I will be using the coils off of. I'll be using GTR coils for the coil unplug conversion once I get there. But yeah, so I went and got connectors for that so I can build the coil unplug harness, and I ordered the 20 valve VE/VET valve cover, and that kind of is leading me to where we're at in this video. Apparently, the website I ordered the valve cover from must drop ship them straight from Japan, because it's going to be about 6 to 8 weeks, they called and said, before I see that valve cover, which is a ways away. We just got into August, so 6 to 8 weeks puts us into almost October. So we're going back to trying to figure out the distributor setup here, I think. Okay, phone cut off, running out of storage, had to delete some stuff. What I'm gonna try is not run pin number 3, which is labeled as ignition signal. I'm not gonna wire that up for now. I'm just gonna loom it up, put it to the side in case I need it. I am going to run pin number 1, which is power transistor control signal, to the pin on the EMU, as if I was running distributor single coil like they have set up in the EMU, because they do have options for the Nissan 360-degree trigger, and they also have an option to run a distributor setup. So I don't see why, with the combination of those two and just, you know, some finicking with the program, which I'm not very fluent with yet, I don't see why I couldn't get it to run on the distributor. But I'm already diving into the coil unplug setup. Like I said, that'll be for hopefully a winter project, or just a late summer fall project once this valve cover comes in. But that honestly seems like a very simple project now that I'm kind of understanding it a little bit more and diving into it, and especially since I have the standalone to work with. Makes it a lot easier to do that swap kind of in a weekend sort of thing. So what I'm going to attempt to do, like I think I just said, is not run the signal that is labeled as the ignition signal, only use the power transistor control signal, and I think that'll be good to run it. That's what I'm going to try. Probably in the next video I'll be working on that. For now, this was kind of just to finish catching up to kind of where we're at with this harness, because it definitely was getting a little bit overwhelming for me there for a minute. I'm probably holding this camera so bad right now. But one more thing I want to cover before I kind of cut it off in this one really quick for you guys. I just found this in my harness. So this is the distributor plug. This is one of the wires for the cam signal. I've actually had like on and off a few times in the Nistune, it'll pop up with a cam sync issue. Clearly the wire that was not holding on. So gonna have to get that fixed up before I go any further as well. Hopefully we're on the right track here. Another thing I guess I'll show real quick. I dove back into the interior harness, just kind of wanted to clean all that up, since I've added a bunch of switches and gauges since the last time I had the dashboard out. I like having all my wiring and everything so I can pull the dashboard in and out and leave all the wiring and all the gauges kind of where they're at and make it really simple to access everything, because I do have relays and some other stuff that I put in there. But that is going to do it for this one. I know it wasn't super entertaining. I'm trying to just get back into the YouTube stuff, so that's going to do it, guys. Definitely stay tuned for the next couple of videos, because I'm not stopping until this thing runs on the standalone. I'll see you guys next time.